Hey, Christie, how many times have you said badass in the collective works of the Why and the Buy podcast, spanning now close to 80 episodes?
You mean recorded? Today, badass your brand. I just have been waiting to say that for a long time.
Well, we're going to set the record as soon as we come back. Hi, Christie.
Hi, Jeff.
We're recording now.
The many hours of conversation you and I have had, we've had probably half of them that haven't been recorded.
You know what we should do? We should start a podcast.
You think? Let's call it the Why and the Buy.
All right. And we're back. That was fast.
Wasn't it?
Hi, Christie.
It's like magic.
How are you
Hey,
today?
Jeff, how's it going?
I'm doing great. I'm really, really excited about our guest today. Pia Silva is with us, and so I have a confession to make. I sent one of the most overzealous, hastily worded tweets to Pia a couple of weeks ago. It was public, and I just tweeted out there, I'm like, Pia, please come on the show because I just downloaded your book and I've been on your website and this sounds really terrible, but can you just come on our show? And she just responded, well, yeah, great. Thanks for asking. And I'm like, well, that's so cool because I've never actually, propositioned anybody like this on Twitter before. So I'm a little embarrassed, but thanks, and we'll talk to you soon.
Why not? If it works.
And now she's here. So hi, Pia Silva.
Hi.
How are you?
Well, thanks for reaching out, Jeff. It was awesome of you to ask me, and I'm happy to be here.
I've listened. I say I read your book. I listen to more audiobooks than I read books. But Badass Your Brand is the name of your book. And I was drawn to you because you are a Forbes contributor. And as someone linked to your one of your Forbes articles, which led me to more of your Forbes articles on selling and marketing. And then I went back to your website and I saw this concept that you have on your website that your company provides called a brand shrink. And I'm like, what is a brand shrink? And so I looked at it, and the idea of a 2 to 3 hour planning session to help companies, small companies, and in your case, 1 to 3 person service-based businesses, much like mine and Christie's, where you really help people dig into what differentiates them. And I swear, people don't, use bumper stickers anymore, but I swear something should be on a bumper sticker to the effect of, if you cannot differentiate, you cannot sell. And that has been a wavelength on my brain for several weeks. And for someone else to come and validate it that way was really kind of powerful. So how did you come up with that concept? And what kind of a difference, and maybe that's too grandiose of a question right off the bat, but what kind of a difference has that made for some of your clients? I mean, do you see the light bulb moment when you're working with these people?
Yeah, it's a great question. The brand shrink actually really evolved over time out of our own need to understand what was different about our clients in order to properly and powerfully design them a brand. So this all kind of came backwards. We were a design company. And then we started realizing that in order to get our designs through, we needed to really understand the strategy. And then it kind of that's how we morphed from a design, basically a freelance graphic designer, my partner originally. It's a freelance graphic designer, and I was just looking for the clients, into a very high-level strategist where we're a branding company. And the design is there, but it's kind of almost the end product. It comes out of the strategy. So the brand shrink evolved out of my own need to figure out what was different about these clients so that I could actually give them a brand and a design and a message that would help them. So it's really selfish, actually.
As most
it's selfish, but it was all about helping other people.
Yeah, it was about actually delivering on the thing I wanted to deliver on. So I think in my own evolution of understanding what a brand was, I came to learn myself how important understanding what the goals of the business are and what you're trying to accomplish and who it's for and all of that. And how can you possibly make a decision about the color of your website or your logo or what photo you should have if you don't know these things first? I think that's a big problem with a lot of freelancers, is that they don't even know that you should know this when they're designing the brand. And that's where so much confusion comes from. So this was me kind of realizing that and then building a process so that I would actually have the goods so I could do the work properly. and actually deliver on what they were looking for.
So you can't just go to Fiverr and in 10 minutes have a logo and a whole brand scheme and everything?
It's funny you should say that. I'm in the middle of writing an article about Fiverr right now, actually, because I love Fiverr.
Oh, yeah.
For certain things, That's not where you go to get some expert to tell you what your logo should look like. But if you need something produced production-wise, it's a great place, And I think people hate on it and think it's undercutting their services, and I obviously don't believe that at all. I think it's great.
Well, and I love sites like Upwork and Fiverr and others that are really creating this entire economy of freelancers who had no idea how to go get clients again before. So I think it's phenomenal, and there is business that you can do on those sites and business that you don't do on those sites, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it fills a need.
I completely agree.
What's interesting though is we found our designer, Christie, on Upwork.
We did.
And
phenomenal.
She's phenomenal, and I think we were the only customer that she ever had from Upwork. Is she's kind of off doing her own freelance thing now because what we saw in her. I know I've referred her to a bunch of people. She did my design after, my branding design after she did our podcast design. But it was round after round after round of like, okay, we're moving forward. Here's the concept. What do you want it to look like? That's not where I come from, right? I'm just a salesman. So for me to understand the how much effort and thought and work goes into designing that logo, those colors that represent you for everybody before you get there and after you leave, that's just something I kind of take for granted. And I think that's why a lot of people say, well, for $5, I can get this thing done in 10 minutes. And it's great. But when you look at a true professional do it, like Liz Borkert did for us, a little free plug for Liz. She just puts so much time and effort and energy into it. You really see the passion that goes into it. And I think, whether you're a branding company or whether you're a service company, to be able to have your branding reflect the expertise, the skill, the passion. And if you go to it's worstofalldesign.com, right? And you go to your website and you see some of the brands that you've represented. It's wild. And there's so much personality that comes through it. And it's just like, that's what a brand should do for you. So how do you, in your creative process, how do you tease that stuff out? I mean, obviously you've got some talent that just few people have, but I mean, what's that brand shrink process like? What are some of the, I don't want you to give it away, but what are some of the elements that you look for in terms of teasing those things out? Because not all of our listeners are small businesses. Some of our listeners, a great deal of our listeners are just, bag carrying salespeople, so to speak, but they're taking their watered down marketing messages out there and they're not successful with them. And I think there's some nuance that needs to be uncovered. How do you help people tease that nuance out?
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to asking questions from a bunch of different angles. So people come to us for a brand. And by the way, I'm not the genius behind the beauty. That's all Steve. I don't touch the design, actually. I'm the strategist and the messaging and all of that, which goes hand in hand. But I find that it's, you sit down and you talk about your brand, and most people are very myopic about the questions that they ask. And yeah, okay, fine. They talk about the landscape, the target market, the competitors, but I want to know more about the owner. What's your big goal? Tell me about your past. Tell me about your past clients. Who do you love? Like, who have you worked with that you did an incredible job for? Where is your highest value that you can deliver on? What's the stuff you don't like? I mean, I'm often teasing out in these conversations that people are building businesses they dislike, around services they don't want to deliver because they think somehow that that's where the money is, or that's just where they've ended up. And I think a lot of people go through business. They start with a lot of passion and excitement doing what they love, and then they kind of end up defaulting in all these different ways because they follow the money, kind of, but then they're not following the money, and then they end up in these habits that are really bad for them. So the brand shrink is all about really assessing, what do you got? what have you done? And let's figure out what your badass brand is, where you could really own your positioning, own your value. And then let's just build a brand and a business around that one thing, that specific focus. And it's, where that is a big part of my job, finding that, because that is your brand. That's what differentiates you. But it only works if you're willing to own it. And you're willing to say, okay, I'm going to double down on that. I'm only going to be that. And, I've had a rash of clients recently who have kind of said at the end of it, oh, but what's the line? As if the line is the answer. And so a lot of what I'm doing is education. I could give you a bunch of lines that would all be amazing if you built a whole brand around it. But throw my tagline, Badass Brands Without the BS. I like to call it a tagline, but that's the main line on our homepage. Throw that on a lame website and it's not going to do anything for you. So that's that's a lot of my job, is educating the clients on how it's the line with all the brand to back it up. And that's so important.
Do you find, Pia, that small business owners especially really struggle with the idea of honing in on that one thing they do well? I mean, I have a couple of small business clients too, and it seems like, their offering is way out here. And I'm like, it doesn't mean you can't do that, but the story you tell needs to be the tip of the spear. So, but it's so hard for people to they're terrified to make that decision. How do you get them past that?
Absolutely. I see that every day. I mean, it's one of the biggest challenges because it's fear-based. It's very scary. If I only own this one thing, but I could do all these other things. What if somebody would pay me for this other thing and they don't know? And I mean, obviously, I try to explain it as, there's your brand and then there's your business, and they're not the same thing. There's like all the stuff you do, and then there's your brand, which is how people think of you, see you. It's very simple. It's very specific. It's clear. Man, you should see the kinds of things we do for clients. I mean, I take a personal responsibility for every client I take on. So sometimes I have literally set up people's Schedule Once accounts because they don't know how to do it. And I'm like, you need this, I would never put that on a list of things. That's not my services. I'm just taking care of them once they're my client. So, that's what I do. There's a whole bunch of things that I do back here, but I barely even list the stuff on my website. And I wrote a whole article about this, stop listing all the things you can do, just own the thing. That's how you create that expertise, and that's how you sell on the value. And that's how you attract people who want to hire you as an expert, as opposed to, I can do your logo and your identity materials, and I can build you a website, blah, blah, blah. Everyone says that it's so boring and it's completely commoditized. So that is not a strategy anymore. So stop saying it, find your thing and own it. And it's so much more powerful in the end.
Totally agree. And it's funny how many times I've heard that. Christy, I know you've heard that. We were talking about that earlier, but yes. Sometimes you just
actually, we're talking about it with my business. Jeff was trying to help me differentiate with my business.
Well, it's terrifying.
It is.
It's terrifying. And when you're getting started, you want to prove to everybody that you're the same as everybody else, like you belong. Because I think there's a certain part of you, the small business owner, that wants to tell yourself that you belong. And then to stick out like a sore thumb on purpose is it's counterintuitive. It's human nature to want to fit in. We find tribes. We find people who like what we like and do what we do to be a part of that. But the idea, I think it's a little counterintuitive anyway, to take the approach of sticking out on purpose as a means of surviving, as a means of succeeding, let alone surviving.
Yeah, I mean, this is where the word badass came from. And, we started saying it maybe 5 years ago. It was a little more inappropriate then. Now it seems like a lot of people say it. And although I like to point out, a lot of people send me stuff that says badass, but they go, oh, look, they're using your word. Great.
You're like, I didn't make that one up.
but that's where it came from. It came from, I'm not just using this kind of trite word because it sounds like fun. It's like, No, it takes a lot of guts to stand out. It takes a lot of guts because it's very scary. Think about high school. It's like you want to fit in. You don't want to stand out and be noticed. If you look different, if you sound different, people aren't going to like it. Someone's not going to like it if when you stand out. And on our homepage, it says, if you want to be loved by some, you got to be okay being misunderstood or even disliked by others. And nobody wants to be disliked, including me, by the way. Like, people dislike what I say all the time. And, I have grown a thick skin around it and kind of embraced it because I see it now. I truly see it now as a representation of, I'm saying something interesting, and if you're saying something interesting, people are not going to like it. And if you're just trying to please everyone, you're going to have to water it down and be generic so that you don't piss anybody off. And there's nothing interesting about that. And you're going to struggle, and you'll be in that struggle and that hamster wheel forever. I mean, when I used to network, the people that I used to network with 6 years ago, they're still networking and they've been doing it for like 15 years. That's how they get their clients. And you know why? Because there's nothing that they're saying that's memorable. So they have to show up with their face every week to be remembered, because they can't be remembered any other way. Networking has its time and its place, but it's as a long-term strategy, it just shows that there's nothing memorable about you. You should be able to plant a seed and walk away, and have that seed grow into a tree without you there. That's how you build a successful, profitable business, in my experience.
I've been to those meetings and they say, Jeff, you just got to give it, like a year or 18 months, and then people will start to trust you over time. And then, and then they'll send you some other referrals. And then, you go to a couple meetings as a guest, and then you don't show up for a few, and then someone else brings you as a guest, and you pop in, 6 months later and like, hey, you used to be here. You can't, like, they look at you sideways, like, no, you're not part of this tribe. And then, well, I don't know if this group's for me. Well, Jeff, you got to spend a lot of time trying to find the right one. I'm like, how many 12 to 18 month periods do I have to be able to guess and check and try and trial and error all these different groups? And like,
what are you not doing in that time that you could have been doing?
Oh,
and that's like my biggest thing. I mean, the opportunity cost of spending time doing that is huge.
So how long did it take you to realize that you were doing something different?
Well, I wasn't. At first, I wasn't at all.
Well, no, but I mean, okay,
mean?
So maybe let me rephrase that question. So the idea of the badass brand, and you tried to do something and then you didn't like the way things were going, and you've done the networking and you didn't like where that was going, but what made you realize that you had something that you could talk about in a way that other people weren't talking about it?
Fair enough. So over the first couple years of our business, we definitely trial and error. We tried to fit in. And that was, by the way, I think that's just part of the evolution of being an entrepreneur. First, you got to try to be as good as what's going on around you, because you're new. I didn't know anything about this. So I just wanted to look professional. I just wanted to be taken seriously. But then I moved past that and realized, okay, well, we're just like them, but we're just like them. There's nothing interesting. So I have to find our space. And there was a couple big, really light bulb moments. One of which was, we are trying to be something we're not, by copying the other people we see who seem successful, but in retrospect, it's not that they're not successful, it's that they're still on those hamster wheels, those agency hamster wheels, lots of pitching, high-priced clients, but also not that profitable, a lot of work, all of that. And we had to turn around and look inside ourselves at what we loved most about how we work, what we're really great at. We actually downsized in this time period. We got rid of our employees. We went back to Pia and Steve, two very intense workers who are really obsessive over like doing our work, but love to work really intensely. And a couple other things, looking back at some clients and projects that we did that we really loved, and found this space where we said, wow, this is something agencies actually can't do. They're not nimble enough. We actually, the two of us bring a lot of different skills to the table. In most agencies, there's the writer, there's the designer, there's the creative director, blah, blah, blah. But we actually encompass a lot of those things. Actually, we could probably, jigger this into what became this this very special and unique thing. So, it was a bit of an evolutionary process, but there was a turning point where I said, okay, now that we've done all this work and worked with all these clients, we can actually look back at them and say, hone in. That's where we need to focus. And if we focus there, we can really own our expertise and build a reputation in that space. And that's what's going to be, valuable in the end. And at first, the price point was good for us, but it was still low compared to what we have now. But because we focused on it so intently and we did it over and over and over again, we raised the prices very, very quickly. And that's another thing when you were asking about newbies, that's what I recommend. You can't just leap to expert or specialist, but you can work with a bunch of clients and then hone in. And if you just repeat the same thing a lot with the same space or the same challenges or whatever, however you decide to niche, you can become an expert much more quickly because you're doing one thing all the time as opposed to doing lots of things all the time and then never really advancing at any of them quickly.
If you like us, tell us. Send us a message at The Why and the Buy on Twitter, or leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you got this podcast.
Jeff and I are beyond excited that you choose to spend your time with us each week. We'd love to hear from you. And we thank you again for your support and for your connection. What is the one thing, Pia, that you find small business owners haven't asked themselves when it comes to finding that differentiation or finding that niche?
I don't think they've gotten really honest with themselves about whether they're willing to do what it takes to build the business that they want.
Oh, okay.
Because it's hard stuff,
Mm-hmm.
You have to get over your issues about sales. You have to get over your issues about pricing. You have to get over your issues about how you feel you value your own work and are you worth it and all kinds of stuff, you have to get over needing everyone's approval. Are you willing to do that? That's the work. That's the work that's important here. So
yeah, that validation can be crippling sometimes, or that need for validation.
Oh, and there's just all that prep work. That's all stuff that you need to do before you actually get to work. I mean, and you can get a couple of clients that can encourage you to start this business, from scratch. But the idea that to hone in on what you're doing, you have to put in the thought first, right? I mean, and the preparation part of the entire process is knowing what you can go out there and do. And you have to be really self-aware and self-reflective to kind of identify those things. I mean, and that's why I asked my question, earlier, Pia. It's, okay. I didn't realize I was doing anything different than anybody else or differently than anybody else, because to me and to a lot of people who get into business or who are very successful in sales and in selling, like, this is just what comes to them. This is what I do. Wait, you mean not everybody's asking these questions? Like, how, and it's, I always try to, co-travel with other reps or at least have those virtual windshield water cooler talks with other reps, because I always work remotely. Like, how are you getting into these places? How are you engaging with these people, to try to distill what I could from other people? And, it's clear that everybody had their own style, but the fundamentals were all there. And so there were so many things when I first started my business that I just took for granted that I didn't realize that I was doing differently. And it wasn't until I had some conversations with some other people that I'd met who had different perspectives and different backgrounds. And they're like, Jeff, are you realizing that you're the only one that's saying it this way? I'm like, no, actually, I hadn't realized that. And then once that light bulb went off and you can identify with it, then it's like, okay, let's pursue this. Then you dig a little bit deeper, and now I pass some things around. I've got an ebook that's coming out that's later going to turn into some other things. It's really becoming my area of focus, or as Christie and I, it's Christie's term, the tip of the spear, so to speak, is, now that I've identified that, now I can pursue it and go with it. And I can't begin to tell you how freeing it is. Christie knows that, and Pia, of course, knows that. But anybody listening, I can't begin to tell you how freeing that is when you can really identify with something, and then you've got it, and you can focus in that area. And when you try to do everything, you end up doing everything, and there's always more to do. But when you have that area of focus where you can become an expert, where you have a clear strategy for how to promote and deliver these kinds of things, it's amazing. And I think, Pia, that's what you help people do. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I got from listening to your book. And that made the biggest difference for me. And Badass Your Brand is what it's called. So and we'll talk about all the promo stuff at the end of the episode. But go buy the book or download the book or do something and just even if you're cheap and you don't want to do either, go to the website and see what you can glean from reading the copy on the website, because that kind of focus is it's necessary anymore. Everything is becoming commoditized. Just ask your customers, because no one wants to pay more for what you do. We have to, as salespeople, understand how to communicate to those customers and those clients to get them to appreciate the differences.
Well, and I think the thing that I really love, Pia, about the way that you describe the work that you do with your clients is that there is your business, the thing that you do, the thing that people pay you for, and then there is your brand. Now, there has to be a cross-section of the two, but ultimately the brand work, the badassing your brand work, really requires you to get super focused. A lot of small business owners or freelancers, whatever category you might fall into, may struggle with answering some of those questions. It doesn't mean you abandon today the thing that is paying the bills. So you got to figure out how to make the mortgage, right? I mean, you got to figure out, what is my short-term objective? What do I need to do to keep the lights on? And get that ironed out so that you can focus on where you want to take this, right? I mean, so I suspect there's a little bit of almost business coaching that you're doing in that process of, we're not telling you to abandon everything that you've made money doing, but you got to get laser focused if you really want to grow this to the next level.
Yeah, it's definitely a process. I talk about the gap a lot. When you niche down, when you focus, okay, there's going to be a gap because now you're re-educating everybody. What do you do in that gap? Do you just say no to everybody? Do you take them on the side quietly? I mean, I kind of have a lot of semi-rules for that on when to take clients for money that are outside your niche. They have to be giving you other value. I mean, I look at every client as delivering multiple levels of value. It's not just what they're paying you. It's the experience you get working with them. It's the future referral you get from them. It's, your ability to practice doing what you're doing and improve on it so you can do it better later, so you can charge more later. There's a lot of different reasons to work with a client. And if you just think about it as the money, then you're being very short-sighted, because your brand is a long-term thing, and every client can either add to that or detract from that. Jeff, to your point, I think it is an evolutionary process. I do this with clients, and I get them, I create their whole foundation. But I coach people. Consider myself more of a consultant, but I consult with people. I started doing it on a more ongoing basis, kind of in a group setting, because I found that, it is evolution. It is an evolution, and you kind of need help along the way. And one of, I think, the best ways to continue to hone your expertise is to write. And, you don't have to become the best writer, but the exercise of writing and trying to articulate, and that's what you were saying before, Jeff, is you were doing all this stuff and you didn't even know it. Well, if you had to explain it to someone, you would be forced to articulate the very expertise that you have. And I found that was a great way for me to start to hone in on things I was doing naturally. And then that became part of my brand. So I really recommend that to business owners, to start writing right away, even if you hate it, because it's an exercise. You really can't match that with anything else.
Did you talk to Jeff before this about me?
Why? Has he been telling you to write?
No, he's the writer. I'm working on it. So we've had more conversations about writing than probably anything else at this point. But you custom made that for me. So thank you. So Pia, one of the things that we ask all of our guests when they come on the show is, what is your why? So
I have a almost too big vision of this complete toppling of the economy that I'm going to create.
Nice.
And that's my why. It's called
we love revolutionaries. That's awesome.
It's called the solopreneur economy. I've been working on it for 15 years, although it wasn't called that at the time. But I'm a really big believer in, because feeds me personally, having the time and space to create your own stuff, like really express yourself, but also create things that are of value. I really love working with service businesses because they create value out of nothing. There's no waste, there's no products, there's no anything else. So with your own energy and intellect, you can actually create value and make the pie bigger, which I think is a really exciting idea. So my solopreneur economy is really about me trying to help empower a lot of small businesses be able to do that and create these thriving businesses, not necessarily to become, millionaires and create some sort of corporate pyramid structure, but just to be thriving and have the additional abundance where they're also supporting other people who are doing the same thing. So kind of like up-leveling the value that everybody is creating. And that only happens when you're making enough money that you have the space to do it. So it's this whole little intricate thing that's in my business that I'm trying to get a lot of people doing to kind of bring the level of service and value up in the world in a very independent way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
so that's
a huge servant leadership element to what you just described. I mean, just really
servant leadership.
Yeah. Just being a servant leader. It's that idea of you get everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And
I love that.
Yeah. So Zig Ziglar, that was not Christy Walters. That was Zig Ziglar. But
I haven't read a lot of him, just his quotes.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what it's all about. It's really about helping and driving other people to that level of success. And there are a lot of people that we've had on the show that kind of reinforce the importance of doing that, of giving back to the community, and it comes back in spades. It comes back to you in big ways. So.
Yeah. And I find it very fulfilling. And my favorite thing has always been, I've always kind of been the facilitator of other people's genius. Like when I did a visioning exercise, that was my sentence. It was I facilitate the achievement of others. I'm a big organizer and stuff.
Nice.
So I really thrive on that. And I ended up being in the forefront, but that was almost okay, I guess I'll have to do this. So I really built a business around Steve's amazing, talents. And that's what I kind of like to do. So.
That's tremendous. I'm taking notes over here, and it's funny that the solopreneur economy. I think the gig economy has already kind of been coined and talked about a lot. But I mean, when you look at, my kids are 6 and 8 right now, and the world is going to be so much different for them when they come to that enter the workforce kind of age. And I was joking with my mom a couple of. It was about a couple months ago. It might have been last winter actually. And I said, "Ma, I don't think the kids are going to college, and I don't think I'm going to retire." She's like, "What, is the business struggling? What's going on?" I said, "No, I kind of love what I do. I don't think I ever want to stop. And quite frankly, I don't know if the kids are going to need college. There's so many other ways they can go out and provide and create and exist and thrive. Coming out of this, industrial age where you go to work, you punch in, you punch out, you make enough money to go do some fun stuff some other time, but you sell your time during the week so you can go enjoy your time at other, at other parts of your life. And that's just such a mediocre way to exist. And I think, that's what I love what you're doing. It's, the solopreneur economy and making the pie bigger. It's not about taking my piece of the pie, because that's the way my parents talked. It's like, no, I'm going to get mine. I'm going to work hard so I can get my piece of that pie. Well, no. Let's just make the pie bigger. Why don't we make the pie bigger? We all get enough. If we do this the right way, we will all get enough and we'll be fulfilled in the process. And as a guy who loves to eat almost as much as he loves to cook, I like getting more of the stuff that I like. I like bigger pies. I'm down with bigger pies. So what's next for you, Pia?
I'm making moves on the solopreneur economy. I love working with individual clients, and we continue to do that. But we don't push that as much. We get those clients, those clients kind of come to us. I'm really moving into trying to help people in big, like more people. So I'm going to continue to write. I've got a couple more books in me, at least. I'm working on a couple books at the same time, as it sounds like you are as well. I've been kind of coaching people and consulting with them and helping them implement this stuff, because that's what I really want to do. I love doing the hands-on stuff, but I'm really enjoying empowering others to do it for themselves. So, just growing that and trying to touch as many people and help as many people shift their mindset so they can build this like beautiful little business for themselves. And that's all I want.
Awesome. Where can people find you?
Well, you can follow me wherever. Pia Loves Your Biz, B-I-Z. Can you tell? I love your biz. So you can't forget that. Pia Loves Your Biz on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And then so all this talk about my brand shrink, I actually am going to give a copy of my interview questions to your listeners. So I'm going to put that up on badassyourbrand.com/the why and the buy. And if you go there and you download the brand shrink, it's I don't ask all those questions in the interview, by the way, like it would take hours. Those are all the questions. So I'm better at it. I just ask the questions. But if you go through that and you answer those questions, you will learn something about your business. I have no question about that. And then if you do that, you'll also get the first chapter of my book. So you can also just check that out.
Excellent. Well,
awesome.
I'm definitely, Jeff and I will probably be the first ones to download that on the link.
Well, that's only because we know what the link is, 4 to 6 weeks before anybody else does.
No one needs to know that. I mean, so by the time this airs, someone needs to send us an email and say, okay, what did you learn after answering Pia's questions? That's what we need to hear from you.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you for your generosity.
Yes,
thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for putting out your work at such a regular clip on Forbes.com. The stuff that you're doing there is really, really good. That's how I found you initially, and I know that's how other people will find you too. But it adds a little bit of credibility to this nonsense you're spewing on our show here today. So
I know, that's why I said okay to them. I was like, Forbes? That doesn't really sound like me. All right, I think they won't let me say badass though.
Really?
If you've noticed,
really?
But man, it's tough. It's like, yeah, I feel very censored. I said, when you let people say this, because you will, you're going to catch up at some point, you better make sure that I'm the first one. And so they promised me I will be the first.
We'll be on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you can always check out the book. Yeah.
I'll be celebrated.
Go check out the show notes. The URL to the free giveaways from Pia are there. While you're there, rate the show. Tell your friends. Tell somebody to listen to us. Tell somebody else to rate and review us. Go and learn something and ask yourself those questions. Learn something about your business. Learn something about the way you sell. And, come back and listen to us often. And follow Pia because she's worth following. So thank you, Pia, for being here. This has been really, really good. Very, very helpful to our audience.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was great being here.
So Pia Silva knows her whys.
That's right, because when you know your why, your hows and your whats get much better.
Thanks for being here. Talk
See
to
you guys.
soon.
I told you once, I've told you twice. I told myself it doesn't matter.
99% of your success is rooted in your understanding and subsequent mastery of the fundamentals. I don't care what it is that you're doing. I was introduced to the fundamental principles of sales when I read Jeffrey Gitomer's Little Red Book of Selling back in 2005. I actually bought it and gave it away 4 or 5 times before I finished it myself. Now Christie and I want to give you something. All of those lessons and so many more are now interactive and available online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year on the Gitomer Learning Academy. It has never been easier or more accessible to invest 10 minutes a day in your sales success. Go to GitomerLearningAcademy.com to check it out and send us an email to gla@thewhyandthebuy.com and we'll get you set up with a free 2-week trial. Christy and I were looking for a house band for the podcast, and we were told the Roots were busy. So we found the next best thing. They're called Haskins, and they are gigging regularly in southeastern Michigan and all the time at haskinsmusic.com. Go check them out.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.